Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're very excited to be able to share the time with you today. We have a very special guest who's very kindly offered to join us for some WorkflowMax tips and tricks. So very pleased as head of partnerships at WorkflowMax by BlueRock, really excited to introduce you all to Dave Jackson, who comes and joins us from Ripped Orange, based over in New Zealand. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
You're all right.
Very excited to have you on board. So I guess just before we quickly jump in, just a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. We are recording this, so we will be able to distribute recordings afterwards. We're also going to keep the Q&A open throughout the presentation. And just by way of format, we are going to be visiting a few key themes today. And what we will do is read out a few of the questions at the end of each theme. So that we can keep it nice and aligned to the topic at hand. But without further ado, we should jump in and make the most of the time. So Dave, again, thanks for joining us and very much looking forward to your tips and tricks.
Thanks, Ryan. So welcome, everybody. As I said, my name's Dave. I run a company in New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand, called Ripped Orange. We've been a WorkflowMax partner for over a decade. Been using the product ourselves for over a decade as well. What I want to cover off today is around sort of 7 topics, and these topics are things that we've seen from doing lots and lots of migrations over the last few weeks, but also things that we've seen over 10 years of working within WorkflowMax. So I'm going to loop through each of these topics, from user onboarding, navigation, the flow of invoicing, etc. And we'll pause at the end of each one. I've got a couple of questions that we often get asked that I'll pose some questions. And if you've got some, drop them in the chat as well. We've only got time for a few questions on each of these sequences, but it's a good chance to cover off those areas. So the first area that we see a lot of is user onboarding. So what is the onboarding experience into the new WorkflowMax by BlueRock, and how does that world work? So what happens is there's a couple of different states. When you do the migration, all your users are copied over from WorkflowMax 1 to WorkflowMax 2. So I'm going to use WorkflowMax 2 instead of WorkflowMax by BlueRock and WorkflowMax by 0 because
it's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is a mouthful. So we'll use WorkflowMax 1 and WorkflowMax 2. I've got them blue and green there, which was not deliberate, but I'm pleased that we did it in that state. So you copy a user over from WorkflowMax 1 and they end up in an uninvited state in WorkflowMax 2. You can see them, but they're not there. The next step is you invite them. You click on a button and they get an email, and I'll show you what that email looks like in a minute. When they receive that email, assuming the user finds it, it'll ask them to create a password, a new password. It's not their 0 login. It's not their WorkflowMax by 0 login. It's a completely new password. And when they do that, once they've done that, they're then in what's called an invited state. And at that stage, they can reset their password. Remember, you can't do that. To reset your password, you go out to the website and redo that, or you do it when you log in. They can change their email and password again if they want to. So they can come in, they can change their email, they can do other things like that. And they can set up what's called multi-factor authentication. So how does that look? This is the email that you receive when you send people. So they get one when you click on the button that says invite staff. This is what they get. And they click on the activate now button. They go through this state. So if we look at the state here, and we can see Carleen, no invite sent. So that means that she hasn't been sent anything. So she can't access WorkflowMax 2, can't change her password, can't change her email address. Once they've been sent, you'll see that it's got invite pending. That means they've been sent the email. Now, they may not be able to find it, and that's an important one. If they've lost it, which we do, then you can send them another one, but make sure they click on the most recent one, the one that they've lost, which they then find again, which we know happens. If they click on that, that won't get them in. Make sure they find the most recent one. And once they've clicked on it, so this is your success measure if they have clicked on it, is you'll see, so you see my name there, there's no little paper dart beside it. That means that I'm logged in, I can change my own password, I can change my email address, and I can set my role. So that's the 3-step process. So as an admin, if you can look and you can see if you've got no little paper darts there, then your team have managed to access the site. Now, come in and invite staff. How do I do that? You come into the staff area and you just select on the staff and click. Once you select them, it says invite staff from there. Now, a couple of tips. Just come back from here. You can also, when they come through, they can be asked to set up what's called multi-factor authentication, or 2FA or MFA or whatever acronym you want. That means that annoying text or a scan code when you put in. Annoying, but really good from a security perspective. At the moment, that's not enforced. It's completely your choice to, from a user's perspective, to turn it on or off. Think about that around your process. But going forward in the future, that will become enforced at some stage. And I believe that's late July, maybe, Ryan? Is that sort of the timings?
Certainly. Once the migration period has settled down, we'll be looking to enforce that at an org level, so that you'll be able to apply across all of your staff.
So a couple of tips. Click on that most recent invite. So the second one won't work. Use roles, and I'll show you what I mean about roles in a second. If you've got multiple accounts, if you've created one account and then you've created another test account and then another test account, you may see those in the drop down on the right-hand side. And that may mean you can get into those ones or not get into those ones. There's a few things around there, but what would be good practice there would be to come into those test accounts that you've done and just ask support to delete them. That makes life a lot easier around being able to do that. Now, I did mention roles. I'll come in and show that, and then we'll come back and take any questions around logins. So we're just looking at my screen now. If we come into roles, just up on the cog on the right and into staff here, we can see that there's roles. And what roles allow you to define is you can create a preset group of permissions. So no longer do you have to go in and go, this person, oh, we've had Mary, and Mary started and she was like Steve. You can just set a role for that person and just apply. So much easier being able to manage and be consistent in that space. So certainly encourage you, if you're doing the time to re-invite the users, now's a good time to think about roles as well. Let me bring this slide back up. So we've got any questions around invites in this space? We see a few in the Q&A. Is there anything?
Yeah, I did notice, Dave, that we did have one question which has already been answered. But, can we enforce MFA on staff? So yes, that is something that we can optionally take up at the moment. But as we mentioned, after the migration period, we'll look to enforce that at the org level. So you'll be able to apply across the group. And we
do that up the cog into your profile settings, and down here you can see MFA. You can choose it. So I've obviously put it on. You can choose to turn it on there.
Excellent, thanks, Dave. And then the other one was just rechecking the fact that we can change a user's email address before sending the invitation, which of course we can. Just need to do that via the business settings for staff. Now I can see a couple more questions popping through on this theme. So Dave, on the spot, of course, you talked about deleting unused staff.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe we'll just refresh on that particular.
So it's down the bottom. So say Mark Twain here in our account. See, I scroll down and delete comes up here. So it's in a different spot, but it just appears as you scroll down. If you are the owner, you can't delete yourself. I have seen some tricky scenarios where you get twins, you get two owners, or you get two of the same one. And you just come in and delete one of them. But obviously, if the owner, you need to pass the owner back into somebody else, then they'll delete one of the accounts and you come back. And that's when you see two in the drop down up the top. But yeah, you can come in and you just delete staff from here. You can, and that allows you to come in and do that. Mark Twain, you see Mark hasn't received an invitation yet, and I can come through and change my email address.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I get a little bit is, should I, I've got some staff that have left. Should I be deleting them out of the old WorkflowMax? My view is just bring everything through and tidy it up in the new one, because then you've all got the data. So come through and do that. And also try not to change email addresses between migrations. Take it through and tidy it up in the new one once you're ready in live.
Sure. Another question, Dave, that will be very pertinent to you, of course, is how do we invite an implementation partner?
Sure.
Which is a pretty quick one.
So into the advisors. And so in the previous one, it was an email address. In this one, you go create new advisor or invite advisor. and you can choose and search. So you can come in here and you'll see that it brings up
There we go.
Orange or anybody else in that space. That gets the partner invited to your account, and then they can choose, if it's a large firm, they can choose which staff within that firm can see your account and whatever processes they do around protecting your data.
I think given the time, Dave, maybe just one last question.
Yep.
It's in relation to having multiple accounts. So for those, if you please click on the drop down top left.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I should. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you've obviously got client.
With lots in there. Yeah. So
but
when you jump between them, what was the question?
Yeah, so the question is, it seemingly inadvertently we've got two accounts. So just for everyone's knowledge, if you do have two accounts, it's very likely that you've either set up a number of trials or you have a number of user or staff roles in there, whether it's account holder and somebody else.
We see that a bit.
Yeah, so this can very easily be sorted. So in terms of, for those that have got multiple trial accounts who simply want to remove or delete the unused one, you will need to raise a support ticket with WorkflowMax by BlueRock. We'll be able to help you on that front. And if it is to do with your actual staff accounts, then it's probably a matter of going through business settings for staff and just doing a bit of an audit or a check on where you have staff accounts, and of course removing those that are double up or redundant.
So a couple of tips, and you might see one on my screen, is if you number them, because you may have two orange landscapes or two ripped oranges, you can come into here and you can number them and you can start to see, because you've got three of the same thing, you're not sure which is which. So do that, then you can start to get a feel for which accounts are there. Yeah. And then also come into staff here. And if you see yourself or somebody else in twice, then they've got two invitations through for some reason, you can delete one, and that starts to bring that around. But we certainly do see, I guess, multiple accounts with similar names, but certainly giving them a name is good. And then over on the right, we'll cover this in navigation into support to cancel the account that you don't need.
Exactly. Excellent.
Okay.
We should get charging on to the next key theme.
So we're going to cover off navigation, and I'm going to demonstrate a few things around navigation of what we show people when they first come in. And there's some great resources for people to use to learn how to use the tool as well. And there's a balance. Some of the buttons are in a different place. If you're an admin and we're a training company, you've got to let people learn a little bit. So they've got to learn and explore by doing and finding out how to use it. And if you've got people that are always asking, how do I do this? Maybe it's just, encouraging them lightly to learn and experience themselves in the product, just like learning to drive. So I'm going to cover some of my favorites: search and the favorite, the filters, the breadcrumbs, but also where to go for help. So we come back into, here's the new WorkflowMax by BlueRock. You can tell it's the WorkflowMax by BlueRock because it's not popping off with bright red signs saying the world's about to explode in 7 days. Up on the right, I can configure my dashboard. There'll be more to come in here, but I can choose what widgets I want to see on this screen. Remember up the top here where my name is, this is where I can come into my profile and I can change my name, my email address, and my password. Obviously only if I've been logged in and I've activated my account.
I think one element that I know a lot of people ask for, Dave, in the profile settings is the number of rows to display in tables.
Yeah, exactly. So that's right down the bottom, and you can choose how to do that, which is pretty cool. The other thing, and I haven't done it on mine, but on Orange Landscaping here, you can choose in your tenant to give it a logo as well, which is quite cool. And it's really cool to see a lot of clients doing that. If I move into clients here, we can see a list of clients in our test account. Now, notice that I can favorite some, which means they end in this favorites list. I can also use the filter on the right-hand side, and I can choose ones that are favorited or not favorited, states, etc. So think about favoriting and filters is useful to be able to get a view that you want. Or I can search in my list here. So if I search for a bank, I can see Bank West come up in there. So you've got some options to search around that area. Up the top here, we've got active favorites archived, I can come into context. Now, one thing that's really cool in the new WorkflowMax is that I can come into, say Bob Smith here. Bob's a contact, a person, but Bob also, so his client, Bob Smith, his client is Bob Smith himself, but actually Bob's also related to ABC Company as well. So you can link contacts to multiple organizations, because in our previous world, we had multiple Bob Smiths, because we had Bob wore a lot of hats. And that certainly in consultants and other areas, that becomes really, really useful. We'll come back to the dashboard here. Now, the quick add button up in the top right here, this replaces what was down on the left here around time, etc. So that's where I would go to enter time. And I can enter time in a couple of different ways. I can choose to enter time here and choose from a task. I can choose to enter time as a weekly timesheet. And I quite like the weekly timesheets because I can copy the previous week. If I do that, now I didn't do a timesheet in this account last week either, but if there was, it would come through, which is really, really useful. And if I've got a task that I want to add into my weekly timesheet, I can choose to do that. And I can come through and put details in. If I want to put a comment, see the little green icon, I can come in and put a comment. And I can save my timesheet from there. So it allows me to work in a week, in a daily or weekly timesheet. I'm going to jump forward to something else. I mentioned breadcrumbs, and I'm not sure whether that's a term. It's not bread line on what the kids leave on the bench. What it is these breadcrumbs up here. So I'm in David Jackson now weekly timesheet. If I go back one, you can see I can come through to here, or I can go back right to everybody's timesheets from here. So the breadcrumb is a nice way to navigate within the tool. The other way I can enter time is from the timer up here. I click on the timer, and this is a similar experience to mobile phone also. I can come in, I can enter some time or start the timer, search for a job, search for a task, add some notes, and it's done. Now, the cool thing about the timer is also I can come up to this little exclamation mark up here, and I can go back and forward and look at various other weeks. So it's really preference on how people want to access time. Moving on from there into jobs. Now, one thing that trips people up first time is just, so we've got active jobs, but that's not all jobs, yeah? All jobs is all jobs. And cancelled jobs is completed jobs, or cancelled is archived jobs. So if I'm searching here in active jobs for a job that has been cancelled, will I see it? No. I would need to come into all jobs and search in this completed area. So using these filters helps you define from here. Same with the filter over here. I can come down and choose the filter on the right-hand side. With both of these, if this view of items it's not long enough for you, I think I've set mine to 200, so I'm going to the bottom.
I think you did 200.
You can choose to, there you go. You'd set it 25, you're only going to see a few in there. So you can choose where you want that if you want a longer list there around navigation. A tip, and I'll just jump forward here, browser shortcuts. So notice that your browser shortcut will be different now. It will be at WorkflowMax2.com. So do get people to favorite that and delete the old favorite as well. Okay, what else were we going to cover around navigation? We have covered search, favoriting, filters, the breadcrumb navigation. That's right. The next area is some of the areas that you can have to help users find their way. So we've got the contact us. So that's more for support questions and feature requests. So that would be as an admin, please delete this trial, etc. But down here in this question mark, there's some really cool stuff. So first of all, this what new is a guided tour that pops up as you go through. And as you do that, it'll pop up and give you guidance as you work your way through the product. There we go. I think I had turned it on, or I'm turning it on now. There we go. And you can see it's going to guide you through or walk you through the tool, which is quite cool. I'm going to turn that off now. But if I come into what's new, I'm going to stay where I want to. The other area that can help is obviously the help screen. This feature release schedule, most implementation partners, I think, are refreshing this every week, looking for new stuff. So this is what's coming when. As is with the product updates. I'm not sure how many views you've had so far, Ryan, but that's a short video, which is well worth watching.
A very popular one, yeah. So that's actually led by our head of product, Chris Gold, who provides or shares a weekly update on all feature releases or updates, but also takes the opportunity to walk through some of the typical use cases, just so everyone can see a little bit more firsthand how to use a feature. For example, purchase orders. I know it's just a little different to the way that it was, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But yeah, by going through the videos, you'll get to see that more firsthand experience.
So yeah, thoroughly recommend you watch those as an admin in it. Also the troubleshooting guide. So there's some areas there we're going to spend some time on templates, but if I come into that, it'll take you out to a web page with some really good information there. So we've got timesheets, reporting, custom templates. These are just little mini courses to do.
Yeah, perfect.
And FAQs, yes, some other bits and pieces, but certainly would recommend those. So that's all that I really had around navigation. Have we got any questions there from the floor?
There are quite a few. I'm just trying to.
Can we just say? I think we've got time for say 2 of them, right?
Yeah, let's. I think there's a little bit about the order. I can see a few questions on ordering the actual jobs in the job table.
Oh yes.
So just by ascending or by leveraging the actual filtering capability. I think there's a couple of questions there. If we can have a quick look.
So there's a couple of things. First of all, just in the order down the bottom here in WorkflowMax, you can choose the job order, the client or job number. That's in what you see around your timesheets and the tasks as well. So you can play with those. Those settings have always been there around how to do that. I think what people were asking about though as well was up here in the client. So I can choose to filter this in different ways. So by name, by status, etc., using these areas there. Now there were some things initially, and I think this has gone away, is it was remembering or not remembering and sticking in that. But I think the magic wizards have come through, and I think that seems to be a lot better now.
Yep. And I'll call out one because I know plenty of people have asked about it. It's in relation to the feature release. So it's the global search. We are on track to have that ready before the end of the month. So please be patient with us just a little bit longer on that one. But do be aware that in each of the actual functional pages, like Job Manager, you still do have that full search functionality. Of course, we know there'll be a lot more efficiency to be gained once we have that global search ready for everyone.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Okay.
There are more questions. Of course, for everyone listening in, we are answering them as we go as well. But just for the sake of time, Dave, we might have to keep charging ahead with the next theme.
Perfect. What's the movie when Tom Cruise says, "Show me the money"? I'm trying to remember what it is.
Money something.
Money something. Anyway, put it in the chat if you know what it is, please. So we're going to talk about invoicing flow here, and I just want to step right back to the start. So what's our WIP?
We've got it, Dave. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Someone has come up with it. It's Moneyball.
I thought it was Moneyball. Yeah. It's on the list for my son to watch with him. He's so yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So invoicing, WIP or work in progress. So just a quick definition of WIP. WIP is time that has not been billed. Okay, so think of it like you're walking up the supermarket aisle and you've got a shopping trolley full of stuff, and as they start running it through the till, that's beginning to create WIP or a long receipt. And on that receipt can either be cost items that you wanted to bill or time based on that time. And WIP is driven from the time that you put it on. So the process for invoicing normally, okay, we've done some work, and this is the base process. We've done some work. We want to invoice it, and then we want to invoice it. So in the middle there, I've got adjust, and you can adjust your WIP or what you want to bill in 2 ways. you can apply a discount. So you can say, actually, those items, we were, go back to the supermarket analogy, those items are off. We're going to not charge for those. So time, you can choose to write on or write off when you do that, or you can actually round the whole lot and go, great, it's a whole basket of stuff. We're just going to charge you X figure it. So in WorkflowMax, when I come into business work in progress, if I scroll down and we can see there's $150 worth of time here. I can invoice it. I'm going to create a new invoice. I'll look back to this again, and I'm going to come into this draft invoice. Where's it gone? Here it is. Now, I can choose to make this round this whole job by switching from calculated to fixed price. That's where I could say, look, instead of $150 for that, we're going to charge $5 for that. Or I can come into various items, and if there were timesheets, there we go. Put a couple here. I can say, yes, I'm going to bill it for the future. No, I'm not, or I'm going to add some other hours on. So there's areas that you can work through to adjust, but it's always driven from your WIP. Let's bring this slide back up again. A couple of tips around invoicing. Really consider what you want to show on this invoice. So a lot of what I'm seeing is people are refreshing. It's great. There's more, I guess, interest in WorkflowMax as they're coming back in and looking at it again. So consider what you want to show on an invoice. And one of the settings in the background, and we will dive into custom templates, but if I scroll down in here, we can see on the invoice here, this timesheet notes. So that will drive and put notes, the notes people put in the timesheets, into the task box so they start to appear on the invoice. And that might be useful for you. If you want to go further than that, you can also use some of the custom templates around time, around custom timesheets. But that invoicing flow, as I said, you've got some WIP. You want to adjust it, either write on, write off, adjust time records, and then invoice through from there. I'm going to loop through one other area, which is around the zero account codes, and then I'll take a few questions. But invoicing, we could spend hours in this space. It really comes down to what you want to work on. We'll just bring up this one here. We talk about zero account codes, or as I call them, onion layers of coding. So for those that are not familiar with what a zero account code, it's the buckets where that revenue goes and gets reported on in zero. So if I sell 5 pears and I do 3 jobs of planting trees, then I might want all of that in my tree planting business. Whereas if I'm fixing a tree and selling oranges, I might want that in my tree fixing revenue line. So there'll be different areas where I want to show things in my zero account. How it works is at the first level, the task or cost, you can choose and align a revenue code. So I'll come out of here and come into tasks here in WorkflowMax. And say I choose this delivery task here, I can choose what income code I want. So I've only got 3 in here, but maybe I want this against other revenue. And what that means is that task or cost, that delivery, will come through, and in zero, it'll be coded as other revenue. The job category, so that's the next layer up. If I come into job settings, this is reliant on you using job category. So if I come into, say, garden care here, I could choose, again, I don't have a huge range of ones here, but I might just choose to put this in sales. But maybe I've chosen to have different revenue lines here. Or I've even got clever and I'm using zero tracking codes, and I might be using zero tracking codes in that space. So it works in onion layers: task, job category, and then the last one in the default position, which is where, if it's not coded there, where it ends up. And that's what you do when you set up. So when you come into zero and into your integrations, you can see here sales, purchases. So that's the last spot where that revenue lands. What we do see with some clients is they might set up an account code called coded wrong, and that's where it ends up there. Then they fix it once it gets to 0, and then they trace back why it wasn't there. Maybe somebody hadn't used a job category or had done an ad hoc cost. But I'll bring up some questions here. I know we're going to have a few. So around scenario. So this works for revenue and also in and out. So it's in revenue out or costs in. You use it for tax settings. You could choose to have 0 tax on one item and other tax on others. You can't set it at the supplier level. So if you bought everything from Dave's Orange Co., all of those items, you can't set it at the supplier level, but you can set it at the cost of those supplier level. And as I said, if you use step 1 and 2, so step 1 was task and job category, then perhaps have the default, the catch-all at the end to somewhere where you don't normally see revenue again, so you can see it in your P&L. One of the biggies is it won't work on costs that you add on an ad hoc basis. That's a mouthful, isn't it? But what I mean there is if I come into a job, and we'll cover a little bit of this around purchase orders, but if I come into this job here, and I go to add a cost. Now, I can search for a cost here. So I might choose, see I've got 3 of 50 records, so I might want some ACM furniture here. But if I type stuff, you see it asks me to create stuff. And stuff being just something, an ad hoc record, that's not going to line up to any supplier category. That's just going to create an ad hoc cost. And we'll get to the negatives of that. Whereas if I had chosen something from this list, ACM, it's already set up with all that information that I want. And the last one, which I am seeing quite a lot of, is this last one. And so this is just specifically for New Zealand. I'm not sure around Australia on this one. What other areas? But
yes, it can be prevalent, but less so compared to our friends in New Zealand.
So in 2009, I think it was, New Zealand changed GST from 12.5% to 15%. But since about, if you've been using Xero for more than 10 years, there was this 12.5% GST code floating around. It sits at the top, and it comes through into WorkflowMax because it's pushed from Xero through. You won't have seen it in your Xero, so just delete those. Otherwise, you end up with 12.5% GST, and you're going, what's happened? We've gone back 20 years in that space. So just come through and delete those before you connect. The other thing is if you want to have a name apart from GST 15% on income, if you've got something a little more creative, you can change that name in Xero under Xero Accounting Advanced Tax. You come in and change the name of it to GST rather than GST on income, or whatever you choose to call it, and that's what will appear on the invoices. So a couple of settings in there that you can come through and do. But have we got any other questions? What else have we got around the invoicing area, Ryan?
There are a few here that they are starting to get into a little bit more of the intricacies of some of the customer needs. I think the 2 key themes that I'm picking up, Dave, are around WIP, so understanding what is billable, non-billable, and more critically, what is future billing. And then the other one is just revisiting some of the GST mapping components, just to get a really clear line of sight on that one.
Sure. So we come into business WIP here. So we can see here on the, and this is a good check when you're doing the migration as well, is we can see here time. So if this number is lower than your migration, the pre-WF1, that means that somebody's come in and put some time into your WorkflowMax 1 since you pressed the migration button. And a little pro tip that you can generate a report of logins. I've done it twice so far today. And you can go, it was Mary and Steve logged in on Sunday. And then perhaps you have a chat to them and find out what time they put in. So that allows you to see the WIP area. So the question was, how do I get a feel for WIP? So this is what time I've invoiced, time that I've accumulated. Costs being items that I've added to a job. Deposits being exactly that, deposits or funds that have been billed in advance and not connected to a time or a cost, basically. And that gives you your WIP figure. So 133, negative 133 means we've generated a lot of deposits. So in this space, so negative it means you've got lots of money in advance. And you can see the actual WIP figure is about 82,000 The WIP on this example is pretty poor because there's lots of stuff going on. If you scroll down here, we look at this orange landscaping here, 150 of time. None of it's been billed, so we've got $150 here. This one here, Bob Smith, $29,000 worth of costs, no time. This one, Bank West, we've done $40 worth of time, no costs, and we've sent a deposit for $1,052. So I'll jump into this job. That means we've invoiced before we've done much work. By coming to the financials, we can come down, there we go. So we can see we've spent 2 hours on it. We quoted it was going to be $1,052, and we've invoiced as per the quote. If I come down into the invoice, which is the last one, this one here. We can see here the tax rate at 15%, and that one has come through fine. But sometimes you might find that there's something weird in there, and you may need to come in and choose the tax rate. I won't be able to do this on this because it has been invoiced, and match it through to 15% on GS, 15% or whatever you've chosen to call it. What was the other question, Ryan?
That's the.
Would I cover both? It was WIP and GS, and it was
the GST, yeah, the GST and tax settings and mappings. Interestingly enough, we did have one ask about invoicing in multiples or in bulk. So it might be worthwhile just quickly having a look at that.
So there's different ways you can flow it around this, but I can come in and select multiple and go through. Now, here's a good example. Let me select Bank West. I'm going to select both of those. I'm going to do that deliberately because when I invoice here, is there some WIP on these? Yep. Wait a minute. Oh, there we go. I'll choose these two because they've both got some figures to invoice. Yeah. Invoice. Now, I want to just send one invoice to Bank West, so I'm going to choose, so that's my default, to group by client, and that's going to create a new invoice. Oops, there's draft one pending. That always gets me.
It's the joys of a demo account, isn't it?
Anyway, what it'll do, we'll give it one last chance here, is it will generate a invoice with all the jobs on the same invoice. There we go. So 3 selected jobs. But if I scroll down, we can see that we've got done that. Maybe there's only one job in there. I would see that this job would appear 3 times on the one invoice. So that's a really cool way of doing it. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you just choose per job. So that was the choice from work in progress here. While I'm here, one other area that we do see, so if I come through into here, into the 0 exports, so the status they go through in here is they sit, once you've approved, they sit in pending for a little while, and then they go through to synced. If you sit there and watch it, it takes longer. If you hit the refresh button, it's not takes longer, but it seems like some time. What I would normally recommend there is think about a batch process. You do your invoices, you pack them all through to here. Once you've done 5 or 6, you'll find they've automatically appeared in 0. The time's not huge. It might be 30 seconds, but if you're looking at it and waiting, it feels like a lot of time for it to come through. So they come through from synced to pending. If they do fail, it's normally around a code or a mapping thing. And you can hover across the error, and it'll show you what the error. And often that's just the way the coding at 0 has been set up.
Yeah, correct. Very good. Okay.
We'll keep moving. Is that okay?
I think we should. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Perfect. So we'll go through to quoting. And quoting, I'm just going to be quite high level on this. The key things to think about quoting is how you set up your rates. Are you quoting at a staff rate or a task rate? And what's the structure of your tasks? And do you have phases? So let's give that an example. If you are delivering, say you're building a house and you've got walls, floor, and roof. And in each of those, you've got to build some stuff, design some stuff, etc. You might choose to use phases for that. So phases are what was called folders in WorkflowMax, WorkflowMax 1, and they weren't well developed. They probably came quite late in its life cycle. But phases allow you to group a set of tasks together into one phase and present them on a quote and invoice, which is really useful. So you can have the same tasks, but in one phase, and then the same tasks in the next phase. And it allows you to present how you want the information shown. So if I come into business quotes, I can create a new quote. And Josh did a great video on phases in the WorkflowMax Facebook group the other day. But I can come in here, give it a quote number. And I can choose some tasks. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to choose consultation. I'm going to choose 2 hours there. Save. And we also need a consultation on the next stage as well. So I'm going to choose this as well. I'm going to choose 5 hours here. Now, for both of these, I'm now going to come back and add some phases. So the first phase is our review phase, design phase. And then this is going to be the build phase. You can put whatever description you want in here and to what level of detail. Now, if I come back into the unassigned, you can see them here. We'll come into this consultation phase, and I'm going to choose to assign this to the build phase. Save it. And I'm going to choose the other one and assign to the design phase. So I've created 2 phases. Now, where this gets interesting is if I can print the PDF, I can choose to show the tasks. I can choose to group the tasks by phase. So now we're seeing design and build. I'm not seeing the actual tasks. I'm just seeing design and build. So I'm losing those extra steps in that space, the consultation and other things. But I can start to use phases to group tasks up, which can be really, really useful. Obviously, I'm just using the standard quote template here, but I could have loaded a custom one as well. So phases are really useful. And then just think about the structure of your tasks as you go through. My tasks here, they are set at a billable rate of $100, and I can go through and add more detail on there. The optional means that people have got options to choose when they approve a quote. So a lot of this, yes, there's a bit of work in the quote, but then the exact same work you create in the quote then becomes the job in that structure, which is really useful. So if I come into this job and I issue this quote, mark it as accepted, those phases will come in and they'll be there already set up. One of the other questions we get asked a little bit is if I click on, so if I come into, say, this consultation task, you can see the details in that, which is great. And on the phases, I can see the stages that they go through, which is quite useful. I can choose to click here and delete it, or even assign it to a different stage as I want to go through. Come back to the details phase, and that's where I was looking for here. Scroll down. Say we're done with this stage. I can come up to the cog here. Oh, this is new. I like that little red dot. That's what I was looking for. I click on the cog here. What I was looking for, and some people want to know this, is this billable or whether it's complete. And save. Complete means when I click on that, I can't put any more time against that. Has that changed recently, Ryan?
That was a recent addition just from a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago. So I can come in here, and so now I don't need to be able to find that. I'm done with that phase, and I can't put any time in it. Or more importantly, other people can't put time in it.
While you're on the topic there, just note that the completed action is driven by a user or staff permission. So for some of you who can see the actual completed field but can't save it as complete, just know that there is a privilege that your account holder or system admin will be able to help you with as part of that privilege.
I must say these little red dots are really useful because that can come in and guide you through that. So if I unselect this, that task is not going to be billed. So that's, it might be project admin, which you choose not to bill on for a project.
Correct. Since we're having a look at this, Dave, one of the questions was just understanding what our billing capability looks like for phases, whether it's press or final, and how we segment it between the different phases of work.
Cool. So I can come into phases. Now, progress invoice, and I can choose, where's my phases options? Here we go. Include all phases in the invoice or just the one phase. So I was on one phase there, but if I choose all, I can choose which phases I want to put onto that invoice.
I think a lot of people overlook that particular checkbox. So yeah, thanks for pointing it out, Dave.
Cool. And again, the key with quoting is it really takes a lot to think. And you first of all say, are we billing just for the time on when the meter's running, or are we billing a fixed fee? And that drives a lot of the decision. But there's a lot of thought around how you generate. It's not necessarily the quote that's sent to the customer. If you go, yep, it's going to be $50, here you go, that's fine. Or it's going to be $50 an hour, that's your sort of left or right decision. But then it's the structure from there. So certainly there's some great material on the WorkflowMax website, or feel free to reach out to an implementation partner. Because if you get the quoting right, everything else flows. If your WIP's looking messy and your job's looking messy, then often it's coming back and just getting what you're aiming for to what the end result is, and be able to line those two up. Okay. The next area I want to talk about was purchase orders. Are we okay to move on to those?
Let's do it. Thank you, Dave.
Cool. So purchase orders, buying stuff. So there's sort of two ways that a purchase order can flow. And what we're talking about here is when we are adding costs to a job. Costs being something that is not time. So the first process is you may choose to issue a PO or a purchase order from WorkflowMax. So you haven't ordered the thing, you're issuing the PO. And there's also, there's hundreds of variations of how this happens as well, but we're just going to focus on two. So you issue the PO. So you come in, you select the cost on the job or add it. If you've already added the cost of the quote, it'll be there. If it's not there, you'll need to add it, and you add the supplier. You can then one of two things happens. You either receive an invoice from the supplier and you add the bill from the supplier to it, plus any changes, maybe there's freight as well. So that's when you receipt the purchase order. Or the stock arrives, if you've ordered some stock, and you can do these two together in sequence or not. And we'll loop back to stock as we work our way through, but the stock's arrived and you mark the stock as, yep, I've receipted and got it. And maybe you get the stock first and then the invoice, or the invoice first and then the stock. So what I mean there is if I go out and buy 5 iPhones and I receive 5 iPhones, but I haven't received a bill, and that's very unlikely with buying 5 iPhones from Apple, I can assure you. But stock arrived, I would mark them as, hey, I've received 5 iPhones. Maybe there are only 4 and there's one that I need to track down. So I would do that with the stock. Then the invoice follows and I add the bill from there. Normally it's the invoice first and then the stock. Once you've done that, when you receipt it, if it's a bill, it gets sent to Xero to pay. And obviously if you've coded iPhones as a product in your system, it'll float through, and that's the code that'll end up in Xero. The other scenario is that you just receive a bill. Somebody's gone out and randomly bought 15 iPhones, and you get a bill for 15 iPhones, and you go, what is this? So you receive a supplier bill. So the first question to think there is, okay, who's paying for this? And this drives a few areas, but when you receive the bill, you can add the cost to the job. So you go into the job and go, 15 iPhones, I've added that. I'm going to receipt and issue a PO. So I'm going to generate a PO and receipt from there. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to create a purchase order within the WorkflowMax, add the items and receipt that way. So you can do it either way. It just really depends on how you want to shuffle that electronic paper on your page. And then the bill's sent to Xero. The question to ask in that process is, who's paying for those 15 iPhones? Is your business paying for them and the customer isn't? Or are you passing that cost on to the customer? We'll get to that in the settings in a second.
This screen's probably a good opportunity, Dave, to make mention of one of our ecosystem partners being Easy Bills as part of the AP automation piece. So I actually don't know if you use it every day, but might be a great quick little plug for how that can help drive a bit of efficiency.
So here you've got some decisions to make around matching, but then you've got to type in 15 iPhone X Plus and silver and all the rest of it. Easy Bills scans that stuff and brings it through, but it also says, hey, I've got a bill here for 15 iPhones. Have you issued a purchase order for 15 iPhones? Oh, Eureka, I've got a match, and I'll just do that stuff for you. So what I see a lot in purchase orders is the process varies so much. You might have a manual purchase book and this and that, but Easy Bills allows you to systemize that process and scan through, and also design a workflow, whatever you want. And that bill for 15 iPhones that may have an alert on it that is actually, that kind of needs to get approved by somebody before we pay it or whatever. So it's quite a cool tool to look through. They've done a webinar, haven't they, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's actually this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a few bits and pieces coming up on that product. Great product.
Yeah. For those that might be searching it, it's EZZY, not EASY.
Perfect.
There you go.
One of the areas that I see that is different in WorkflowMax 2 is you're asked around a service or a stock cost. So these are both costs, but the difference between the two is, and really it's the stock cost. The service costs are what they always have. The stock cost allows you to receipt the items, so the stock receipts, and the bill separately, independently, and one or the other. So 15 phones, you can receipt those, and then you get a bill, and you keep the two separately, which can be quite useful because then you can manage that. So if you are managing widgets and certain items, then if you can come in and you can choose when you create a cost, whether it is a stock item, whether it is a service item. By default, I think they all just land as uncategorized, but you can come through and do that. You can also bulk change them. So do come in for this. It's a new change. You can go through and experiment from this, but this allows you to manage between the two. A couple of tips and scenarios. The first one, you need to understand who's paying for the purchase. So is the client? What's the percentage markup that you're using? Is it the firm? Is it non-billable? Is it, staples, paintbrushes that you don't charge, you just charge for paint? Try to avoid ad hoc costs. So I covered that earlier. And the reason why is it sort of stuffs up your process. So if we come back to a job, and if I come into costs, add a cost, try and choose from some of the ones that are in the list here, rather than create ones ad hoc. Because if I choose, say, this accessories, the vacuum, you can see it brings through the unit cost, it brings through the quantity. I haven't got the supplier on there, I've got the cost code, I've got lots of information already there that's set up. Whereas if I just type the cost in, I'm going to end up, it's a little bit harder to do this now. So again, if I stuff, it's going to ask me to create it. It's not going to pre-fill. In the previous one, you could write over the names, and that was good and bad, but you didn't get that consistency. So certainly that cost area there's more process in it now, which is great. So that's a lot of the tips that I had around stock, around purchase orders. Anything else from the list, or have we got most of those, Ryan?
I think you've got most of them. Probably worthwhhile just highlighting the new draft PO numbers and also the ability to add additional after a fully receipted. So I know they're recent features that not everyone would be aware of.
So I noticed there's a phase setting here. Here we go. So draft PO allocation, you can choose to have that on or off. And you can come through and choose whether you want draft as stock or service. So most of the landing is service initially. If I come into a purchase order, we can see that one's been issued, but we've got stock receipts, so that's items. So this was costs versus bills. And up here in options, I can have it as fully received, or I can put it back in a different way as well. Was that the area, Ryan?
Oh, it's actually for a fully receipted purchase order. If you have an example.
There's one.
Perfect. And then just under the options tab. So this is a new feature that we've incorporated, which is the ability to receive additional items. So this is going beyond the fully receipted, and then the ability to go back and, well, unravel it and then add another costed item in there as part of that continued workflow.
And you've really got to put a lot of thought into the quantity of items, especially if you've got one at 5,000. Is that just the cost, or are you talking about how many items? So thinking about that cost structure when you set it up is really important, because that can drive the ability, because obviously you can't receive more items than you've actually received or ordered, but this allows you to do that, which is quite useful.
Yeah. Cognizant of the time, Dave, so we might have to keep charging ahead, if that's okay, because I know this one will have a interest for a few people.
So I'm going to whip through into print template. So what is a print template? Think of it like a mail merge of your data out of WorkflowMax into Microsoft Word. Okay, and just as a mail merge, you bring up in table fields and other areas like that. So we can come in there. Now, a couple of things. You can download from your old WorkflowMax. So you can download your old ones and then upload and make them active. And number one question we got for quite a while, but I love the little red dot that appeared, which is you need to click that to make it active. If you don't see it, click the dot.
Yeah.
A couple other things on that when you're initially doing it. Let me just point these out. So these areas here are quite useful. You can choose to hide or show other information on that phase. So that can be quite useful. There's a couple of things. So there's a really good troubleshooting guide. And if I discard that, come out here. Remember, troubleshooting guides were, where are they? Here. So there's a really good troubleshooting guide on print templates. There's a lot of knowledge there around merge fields and what field appears to what. But let's come into settings and into features and into custom print templates. So we've got a few in here, but I'm going to choose one of the samples that we've already got. And so there's some samples here. Now, there's some really useful ones here. I had this question beforehand. I wanted to show progress claim to date versus actuals, etc. So there's some samples in here for you to use. But again, with this, you've actually got to set up your job with quotes, etc. to make that sing. But if I come down and let's look at a job brief is really cool. So job brief template is not often used a little bit, but basically you've got a job, and instead of getting people to look at the screen, you might want to print out something with the details and give it to the team so they can take it in the van about what you're supposed to do on the job. So everything's there, and you can include notes and other bits and pieces. But let's use this. Remember we talked about folders? So we can come in and we could choose to start with this sample, but I'm just going to choose to start with this quote sample template. So it downloads a template file here. And what I'm going to do is come back into print templates, and I'm going to create a new one. Now, the first thing, just like reports, is what type of template, what table of data or screen of data you're looking for. So in this one, we want the quote estimate. We'll give it a name. Pre-text is active. That's great. Click to upload. It's in my download somewhere. There we go. And save. Now, if I come into a quote, here we go. Print PDF. So I've got this example, but I can choose the ripped orange example that I've just loaded up. And just scroll down a little bit and hit generate. And you can see it's put some information in it, not a huge amount. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to export this as a Word document. Notice that it's brought through orange landscaping, some details here. I could load a logo. I could make it look however I want. This is what the quote looks like. We'll just bring it across here. So there's a couple of really important things. You can see, first of all, clicking up the top here, see how you can suddenly start to see the spaces. So this would be number one tip, is this allows you to see what's happening within the document. And we've got some information that's landing in here. Now I'm just going to come back off there and I'm going to open up the template. Again, this is not something we can do justice in a minute, but if I bring this across here, this is the template in the background. This is the one that I downloaded. Now, table start. So what's this? Or description. If I right click on this, see where it says edit field. So this is, oops, it's been a bit slow for me today. Try that again. There we go. So that's the name of the field. And these are the mail merge reference fields that come through from WorkflowMax. There's a great article that comes them through. But basically you can choose to put pretty much whatever you want within the table start and where's the table end here. So they are the bookmarks between the two fields that you can do. And then it's just like creating a mail merge. You might choose to put, so a lot of questions we get is, oh, I want to put my T's and C's on my quote. So absolutely, you'd create a custom template. There's your T's and C's, and you've got the T's and C's in your second page of your document, etc. So it allows you to come through. You might go, actually, I don't want time and rate on here. Just remove those comments. I want to make this in a different style. Come into design and Word and choose the style that you want on your document and choose the color theme that you want. And you can start to, adjust it however you feel fit, or apply your own custom template and look and feel to the document. So there's a lot you can do in this space.
Dave, there's actually a question. How do we put a logo onto these templates?
So preference information here, that will bring through your bank account, anything you put on WorkflowMax. To put a logo in here, I would put it up in here. So insert picture. I'm going to choose a stock image. There we go. Maybe make it a bit smaller, just like that. And then I've put my logo on that document, because they're right. If your logo, if you've got it within WorkflowMax, that's great. It'll show on your default ones, but it won't show on the custom one. But you can come through and choose where you want to put that.
Excellent. Now, I might just shamelessly call out, Dave. This custom template piece is actually a real strength of you and team. So, if anyone does need some support or more advanced styling or update, feel more than welcome to reach out to Dave after the presentation today. But also, additionally, we do have a support team in-house that can help with some of these. We do recommend go through the actual training package first, because a lot of these elements can be resolved very quickly on your own terms. But if you do need that extra helping hand, we too can support as well.
Definitely, yeah. Start with the templates of the course. That allows you to gets you probably 80% there. You can put your logos on. You can change the color. It's when you want to put something different on. Maybe it's progressive, etc., or you want to change the brand and look on these. And certainly, there's more that you can do.
Yeah, and I just picked up on another question. Can we have separate templates for quotes and estimates? And I guess by extension of that, of course, we can have as many as we would like, can't we, Dave? So it's just a matter of picking them out. Oh, sorry, developing for each use case or each matter, whether it's for all intensive purposes, a blue one for a certain type of work or a red one for another type of work. You can make all those different custom distinctions that you would like. But as Dave has said, start with the sample template and build up. Just thinking about what's the appropriate detail and styling elements that you'd like to incorporate, and then it's simply a matter of choosing from a template in the drop down and being able to apply that Another little helpful tip, plenty of people have asked us about exporting to Word. You certainly can do this. It's only for your custom templates. So you can't do an export to Word for standard or default templates. It's only for your custom ones. Hopefully that's a nice little quick tip for everyone.
Yeah, and we do this a lot. We'll generate a quote and it'll have the T's and C's, the pricing, which we don't change, and then maybe a little bit of product, but we want to write a personalized cover letter. So here's the template, export to Word, and then personalize a bit more. And you've got your quote 70% of the way there, and you're just adding the finishing touches before you send it to the customer around what you need to do. And you know that everybody's consistent in the first 70%, which is really, really good.
I'll just shamelessly call out a couple extra questions, Dave. Since there's a few popping through for templates. Obviously, it's quite a custom arena, so a few little quirks to it. The question is, can we expand column widths on the actual template? Which, of course, we can.
Yep.
And what else? There was another one I wanted to read out. Sorry, I've got lost here. Oh, I think that. Oh, I might have already been answered. Sorry, but that was. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in the actual template design.
And really a lot of this is Word, and there's flexibility to a point, and then there's quirks and foibles that Word has that is just a thing. But yes, you can certainly widen them out and do other things in that space and how you want it to look.
Perfect.
Okay, last topic, I think, was reports. Just bring this up. So I'm just going to really talk generically around reports because I'm cognizant of the time. So the first thing is you've really got to know what you're looking for. So and where to look. I think it's a U2 song around there, isn't there? But what we're looking for here is if you're looking for a contact, then, or if you're looking for a client, the client group report might be perfect. That will have different information, the client and contact group. And I'll have different information to the client and note. So that determines what information you can see on the report. And there is a little bit of just figuring it out around as you work your way through. From there, that determines, as I said, what type of fields you can see on the report. So I've got a job one here, and I can see stuff around job and etc. around that space. I wouldn't see that in the client one. I might see some, but not all. And that's the area that you've got to work through and decide which bits I can see where. From there, and this is a change in WorkflowMax, is you choose the area that you want to look for the data. So how this works is you might go, okay, we want to see all time that Bob had put in. And you need to put a definition around that time. It might be last week, it might be last month, but it's how far and how wide you want to go. And if you want to look at all time for Bob, then it will take ages around that speed. So what we would do is we would highlight it up and go, okay, well, we just want to look for Bob's time last week. Let's focus on the fields that we want to go, because maybe we wanted to see the notes and it was time about this. And then you can edge out that range that you want to display the data on. You move from last week to last month to the last 3 months. The other thing you can choose to do in the reporting area is when you generate it, you may choose not to have as many filters. So maybe it was time for Bob last week that was on this task. Maybe you choose not to have the task there. You just go all the time from Bob and you pop it out to Excel from the export option. You just do a filter in Excel to choose the task. So you can iteratively go through and look that. Otherwise, you're looking across everything all at once. And yes, you will have some speed issues in that, both in the old one and in the new one. So it's this iterative process of generating a report. Now, if I come through on here, so what we're talking about here is the report type. Think of where you want to look, the date range, keep it small, add in the fields and generate it, and then you can go round in a circle around there as you start to expand in a wider area. But I know there'll be lots of questions on reports. What have we got?
There are plenty. So I think it's, if I may, just before we jump into some of the questions on reporting, just want to acknowledge that this is by far our top priority at the moment at WorkflowMax by BlueRock. It certainly wasn't the one left to last because of its lesser importance. It's really just about the sequence of events and building up to reporting in its final stage. For those that have been using WorkflowMax for a little bit now, they'd be recognizing already that more and more data is coming through in a more timely manner, and that will continue given our absolute key priority for this particular space. In saying that, I think, Dave, you've very much got the right approach. It's about, number one, just get the data, and then we can iterate and refine and then get all those filters really working for us. But of course, this will continue to improve day by day. But thank you everyone for your patience whilst we get that up to speed and working for everyone. Okay, but of course we've got a few questions. The date field is a particularly big one. We do know that we do appreciate that this isn't necessarily a welcomed feature because, of course, for those that would be used to using the custom reports, know that you could pull the data from the beginning of time. Of course, we can open up that range in a much grander respect, whatever the time period might be. But for now, it's very specifically a key piece that our product team has chosen to proceed with. It will help for performance reasons across the board, and that's part of the rationale and why we've incorporated it. So apologies that we have introduced it. I know it's not the most welcome thing, but it will help in the long run with how it's being positioned.
One of the things I see quite a bit is people that used to pull down lots of data and put it into, then put it somewhere else, put it into Power BI, put it into Excel. There's a couple of really cool integrations that we're quite excited about. One is one called SyncUp. What that does is it takes it out of the system, puts it into its own database, and then you can connect to it. So you can get close to a real-time view of your data from that. I'm not sure how often the sync happens, but it's hourly or pretty close. And the other one is one called Dashboard Insights. So SyncUp is good for the DIY that's hacked their way through Excel or has done some Power Query. It basically pulls the data out, and you no longer have to do these downloads from WorkflowMax to bring through. Whereas Dashboard Insights is more a pre-built report for you to be able to use. So both are really good tools. And if you're thinking about doing the same process of download, put into Power BI and upload, definitely look at SyncUp before you start down that track again.
Perfect. And of course, the other thing, just for everyone's awareness, we do have that feature release schedule. So there are still some, for example, standard report reports rather, that are still to come, as are some of the feature sets behind the custom reports in what we describe as table joins. So that's still improvements to come. And of course, we will be talking to all of these facets in our weekly product update hosted by Chris. So feel welcome to keep in on the journey there with us.
And that's pretty much at the end. I've got one last thing, but I'm sure everybody's intimately aware. So Tuesday next week or Thursday next week, anyway, at some stage, somebody pulls the power out at the zero end and WorkflowMax is gone. So please do this before you go, export it out. We've got a blog on our site. There's some guidance on that, but this is your chance to grab some data. The other topic that I covered was, this is also a really unique opportunity. We've got a couple of clients taking this up that are looking, I guess, to the future of WorkflowMax and the Zapier, the integrations and the automations, and going, great, we would like a place where we could test this out without our live environment. And you've got this one window now where you can do another migration and bring it through to WorkflowMax by BlueRock, and you've got yourself, in technical terms, a sandpit for you to play in, but not in your live environment, but with your data. So you've got that one opportunity to give that a go. Give that a go over the next week if you wanted to. But yeah, do remember to close your other account before you go in. Questions? Anything else on the list, or how are we are for time? I think we're over time, aren't we?
I think we are a little over time. Maybe we'll do a handful of questions if you're open to it, Dave.
Yeah, I'm quite open.
There are a few. I know that we've already answered, well, our team, sorry, has answered quite a few of them in the background. I know, let's pick a couple at random if you like. Custom reports, sending quotes. Oh, okay. There's one, Dave. If again, you're obviously on the spot here, but in sending quotes via email, showing the signatures. So it's probably a little bit about the org
Oh, yeah.
settings personalization. If we can have a look
Yep.
at that
Yeah,
quickly,
it's a good
please.
one. So if I come into, so there's two parts to that. And some of this will be driven from what's in your current WorkflowMax. I'm still sharing my screen. I think, yep, good. So if I come into, where is it? Features, personalize. And oh, by the way, here, this account logo, that's where you change your logo up here.
Yep.
Report logo, that's what shows on the default template. So not the custom ones, but if you want to put your logo up there on the default one, that's what shows there. And then email here, this is when you send an email from WorkflowMax. What does it put in the header and footer? And as you can see, we haven't actually turned it on our one. But what this does is that will have, say, in this case, orange landscaping. This is the fields that appear in the subject line. And this is the same if you use the zero connections, the same thing. It's these little codes, the squiggly brackets. So you might put invoice number X from company Y, okay? So you can choose to do that, and the same in the quotes and the estimates. So that's what appears in the subject line around that. When you send this to somebody, it's over here. So the sender name, that will come up and it would say orange landscaping or ripped orange. But if I come into the profile settings, the bottom of that email, if I come down here into my email signature, that's where it would put David Jackson, etc., and the details there. So it's a combination of a bit of both in that space. The other one, while we're on the emails areas, if I come into, whoops, it's not there anymore. Collaboration Manager, one of those unsung heroes. So what does this mean? I haven't set it up. I'll set it up now. See if there's another orange landscaping. Well, what that means is if I email orange landscaping at emailworkflowmax.com, that email, along with the attachments, if I have put the job number or the quote number in the subject line, will automatically be attached to the job. So you can have some really neat workflows around this where client approval, you're starting to save those documents against the job. So it's a really useful thing to come in and turn on if you want to use it.
Very good. Thank you, Dave. Maybe we'll pick, oh, I guess we have gone very over, so maybe we'll just pick one more. Oh, by the way, Dave, you might interested to know, we did get Moneyball wrong. It's actually Jerry Maguire.
I wasn't 100% convinced. Thank you for whoever did that.
Yes, well, we did get one answer, but yeah, thankfully,
yeah, often the
come
first
back
answers,
and give us the
unsure.
correct answer.
Moneyball is really good though. As I watched that the other night, it's great.
Also a good film, correct. I think just maybe one last question. I can see a few people have highlighted that they, well, simply put, custom reports aren't working for them. So, Dave, can I trouble you just to walk through your process once again to get the absolute baseline and get data flowing through, just so we're all really across that at a minimum?
Sure.
Thank you. And we might finish it up on that particular question, but for anyone else,
really it's thinking about the report type.
Yeah,
it's thinking about the fields that you want to include, and it's just this iterative start of loading a few. If you've got a really big complex report that you've done that looks back from the end of the time, no, it probably won't run in the new one because there's limitations in how far you can look at it. So you've got to pare that back and then build in from there. So thinking about the criteria, start small but enough to get the data and validate it, and then add the additional filters as you come through. And yes, you can click on the button and then it is a case of waiting. And yes, it might take a minute to load. And sometimes it does take a little while to come through there. Hitting refresh again is probably not going to help you. So it's just coming through. But once you've got some of the data out, then you can build from there. And I think that's, you try and run it and it just doesn't run. But if you narrow it up further, you're going to get a result and then you can go a little bit wider from there is what we would recommend.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. So I might just unashamedly call it out. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it as a head of partnerships. We've obviously got incredible experience in teams like Dave and Ripped Orange, and more broadly the partnership community. If you do need some extra support or guidance or advice, or even need someone to bounce some ideas off in a really timely, quick manner, please feel more than welcome to connect with Dave, team, and others. You can find Dave's details through our partner directory on the website, or by, I'm sure, Dave, you can drop us, tell us where to go on your website as well.
Yeah.
But do feel more than welcome to get connected and help yourself to understand what else is available or how you can get a better outcome in your investment in WorkflowMax by BlueRock. There is a lot on our side that we're still working through. We're working round the clock and making sure that we can deliver the best of experience for you. But Dave, sorry, quickly, for anyone who'd like to get in contact with you, where's the best place?
Yeah, sure. So the website's best, and on it we've got a couple of things. As do most partners, there's quite a few blogs. There's an article there around how to export your data, so well worth coming and having a look at that. We've got a free course on onboarding, quick 5-minute course. There's stuff in the product as well. We're doing a variety of things, but feel free to contact there. We are somewhat busy at the moment, so we're pretty much full up for migrations, but we have opened up a few classes where we're going to do it as a group. So there's a few spaces there.
It's very, very valuable. Thank you for that, David. For those that have open questions in the Q&A, big apologies that we haven't got to them just yet. We are madly, I can see, trying to respond to as many as possible. Dave, thank you so much for your time, effort, and contribution here. There's a lot of valuable tips, and I'm just judging by some of the questions. There's a lot of stuff there that for people that are only finding out for the first time. So I think that's a really again valuable use. So thanks so much and appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan.
And for all of our everyone joining in today, thanks for taking out the time of your day. I know it's a very busy one, but hopefully you found it really valuable and continue to look forward to continuing to support you and getting a great product experience. All right, we'll leave it there then. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day.